Hi there, welcome to Fantasy Hub. I'm Mia, your storyteller. Today's story is filled with heartache, discovery, and a twist you won't see coming. So let's begin.
The morning coffee shop routine had become Daisy's anchor in the storm of her unraveling life. Behind the familiar hiss of the espresso machine and the comfortable chaos of the morning rush, she could almost forget that she would return to an apartment that echoed with the ghosts of shared laughter and whispered promises. The Grand Cafe, with its exposed brick walls and mismatched vintage furniture, had become more than her workplace. It was her sanctuary. Here, amid the aroma of freshly ground beans and the gentle murmur of conversation, she could lose herself in the artistry of milk foam and the precise ritual of coffee preparation. But even sanctuaries cannot shield us forever from the hollow places in our hearts. "Daisy, honey, you're frothing that milk like you're trying to raise the dead," called Gwen Martinez from behind the counter. Gwen, with her silver-streaked hair, pulled back in a practical bun and laugh lines that spoke of a life well lived, had been Daisy's anchor through the turbulent waters of divorce proceedings. Daisy looked down at the pitcher in her hands, realizing she had been stirring the foam long past perfection. The creamy white peaks had begun to separate, becoming a metaphor too apt for comfort. "Sorry," she murmured, dumping the ruined milk and starting fresh. "My mind was elsewhere." "Your mind has been elsewhere for months," Gwen said gently, wiping down the counter with practiced efficiency. "And while I understand why, I think it's time you found your way back to the present." The bell above the door chimed, and the familiar parade of morning regulars began. Sarah from the bookstore next door, clutching her reusable cup like a lifeline. Detective Morrison, whose black coffee matched his perpetually serious expression. The young mother with twin toddlers who ordered decaf lattes and looked like she hadn't slept in months. Each customer brought their own story, their own morning ritual, their own small comfort found in the perfect cup. And for a few hours each day, Daisy could be part of their stories instead of dwelling in the ruins of her own. But stories, as I have learned in my many years, have a way of intertwining when we least expect them. And sometimes the universe conspires to place exactly the right opportunity before us at exactly the moment we need it. Most doubt it was Gwen who found the flyer, crumpled and forgotten beneath the stack of supply invoices. The annual Metro City Latte Art Championship, a competition that drew baristas from across the state to showcase their skills in the delicate dance of espresso and steamed milk. "Look at this," Gwen said, smoothing the wrinkled paper against the counter. "First prize is $5,000 and a feature in Coffee Culture magazine." Daisy glanced at the flyer with the weary disinterest that had colored most of her interactions lately. "I'm not really in a competing mood, Gwen. When was the last time you did something for yourself?" Gwen's voice carried the gentle firmness of someone who had raised 3 children and knew when to push. "When was the last time you took a risk, felt excited about something, anything?" The question hung in the air like steam from a fresh cup. Daisy found herself thinking back, past the divorce proceedings, past the fights with Mark, past the slow decay of their marriage. When had she last felt the thrill of possibility? "I used to be good at latte art," she said quietly, more to herself than to Gwen, "before everything got so complicated." "You're so good at it," Gwen insisted. "I see the way customers' faces light up when you hand them their drinks. You create little masterpieces every single day." That afternoon, after the lunch rush had subsided and the cafe had settled into its drowsy post-noon rhythm, Daisy found herself standing before the espresso machine with a renewed sense of purpose. She pulled shot after shot, steamed pitcher after pitcher of milk, and began to remember why she had fallen in love with coffee in the first place. There was something almost meditative about the process. The careful calibration of grind and pressure, the gentle arc of milk being poured into dark espresso, creating patterns that existed for mere moments before being disturbed by the drinker's first sip. It was art that lived in the instant, beauty that embraced its own impermanence. By closing time, the counter was covered with cups bearing intricate designs, roses that bloomed in cream and cocoa, leaves that seemed to flutter on café au lait, surfaces, hearts that swirled with the perfection of practiced hands. "I'll do it," Daisy said suddenly, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "I'll enter the competition." Gwen smiled, and in that smile, Daisy caught a glimpse of the woman she used to be, the woman who took chances, who believed in her own abilities, who didn't shrink from challenges. The Metro Convention Center buzzed with the energy of caffeinated ambition. 200 baristas from across 3 states had gathered for the championship, each armed with their own equipment, techniques, and dreams of victory. Daisy stood at the entrance, clutching her bag of carefully selected beans and fighting the urge to turn around and drive home. The scale of the event was overwhelming. Professional-grade espresso machines lined the convention floor like gleaming altars to the coffee gods, and everywhere she looked, competitors moved with the confidence of people who belonged in this world. First time? The voice came from beside her, warm and tinged with gentle amusement. She turned to see a man in his late 30s, with kind brown eyes and the sort of easy smile that suggested he found life generally agreeable. He wore a simple gray t-shirt and jeans, but there was something about his presence that spoke of quiet competence. Is it that obvious? Daisy asked, grateful for the friendly face in the sea of intimidating professionalism. Only because you have the same look I had at my first competition 5 years ago, he said, extending his hand. Cameron Torres. And before you ask, yes, I'm competing, but I promise I'm not scoping out the competition. Well, not entirely. Daisy Mackenzie, she replied, shaking his hand and noting the calluses that spoke of hands-on work. And I suppose I should be grateful you're not trying to psych me out. Wouldn't dream of it. Besides, I have a feeling. You're going to surprise some people today. There was something in his tone that made her look at him more closely. He had the bearing of someone accustomed to responsibility, the sort of calm presence she associated with doctors or teachers people, whose jobs required them to project confidence even in uncertain situations. What makes you say that? Call it professional intuition, Cameron said with a mysterious smile. I'm pretty good at reading people. It's part of my day job. Before Daisy could ask what his day job might be, the announcement came for competitors to check in and claim their stations. The next several hours would determine not just who could create the most beautiful latte art, but who could perform under pressure, adapt to unfamiliar equipment, and maintain their artistic vision while judges scrutinized their every move. The preliminary rounds moved like a carefully choreographed ballet. Competitors worked at their stations with intense focus, the air filled with the symphony of grinding beans, hissing steam and the gentle clink of cups against saucers. Daisy found herself assigned to Station 15, directly across from Cameron at Station 16. As she unpacked her equipment and familiarized herself with the industrial-grade espresso machine, she caught glimpses of his work. His movements were economical and precise, wasting neither motion nor time. When he poured, the milk flowed from his pitcher like silk, creating designs that seemed to emerge effortlessly from the marriage of coffee and cream. Time, called the head judge, and Daisy stepped back from her own creation, a delicate rosette that bloomed across the surface of her cappuccino. It wasn't her best work, but it was solid, technically proficient, and executed under pressure. The judges moved between stations like somber priests, tasting, photographing, and making notes on clipboards that would determine who advanced to the next round. When they reached Daisy's station, she held her breath as the lead judge, a severe-looking woman with steel gray hair, lifted the cup and examined the foam art with a magnifying glass. Interesting technique, the judge murmured, making a note. That symmetry, clean lines. The pour could be more confident, but the fundamentals are solid. It was hardly high praise, but it wasn't dismissal either. Daisy allowed herself a small breath of relief. When the preliminary results were announced an hour later, both Daisy and Cameron had advanced to the semifinals. Of the original 200 competitors, only 50 remained. Congratulations, Cameron said, appearing at her elbow as the crowd began to disperse for the lunch break. How are you feeling? Terrified, Daisy admitted. You, the same. Want to grab some real food? I know a place nearby that serves something other than coffee and pastries. The diner Cameron chose was a throwback to an earlier era red vinyl booth, a checkered floor, and the kind of comfort food that reminded you that sometimes the simplest pleasures were the most satisfying. They slid into a booth near the window, and for the first time since entering the competition, Daisy felt herself begin to relax. So, she said, cutting into her turkey sandwich, what's this mysterious day job that gives you insight into people? Cameron smiled and took a sip of his coffee, which Daisy noted he drank black despite spending his morning creating elaborate milk-based beverages. I'm a team physician for the university's athletic department, sports medicine specifically. A doctor who makes lattes, Daisy mused. That's not something you hear every day. My mother owned a cafe when I was growing up, Cameron explained. I spent every afternoon after school behind that counter, learning to work the espresso machine before I could reach it without standing on a step stool. Coffee was my first love, long before I discovered medicine. What made you choose medicine? Over coffee? Cameron was quiet for a moment, his fingers tracing patterns on the table's surface. My younger brother was a runner in high school, really talented, full scholarship potential. During his senior year, he collapsed during a meet. Turned out, he had an undiagnosed heart condition. If someone had caught it earlier, if there had been better screening, better knowledge of sports medicine. He shrugged. He recovered, but his running days were over. I decided I wanted to be the person who caught those things early. There was something in his voice that told Daisy this story had shaped more than just his career choice. Is he okay? Now, he's great. Teaches elementary school, coaches youth soccer, has 3 kids who think their uncle is the coolest person alive because he knows professional athletes. Cameron's smile was warm but tinged with old grief. But yeah, it changed everything for our family. Made me realize how fragile the things we love can be. Daisy found herself thinking of her own fragile things, her marriage, her confidence, her sense of purpose. How quickly they had crumbled when tested. I understand that feeling, she said quietly. Tell me about yourself, Cameron said, and there was genuine interest in his voice. What brought you to coffee? Desperation, Daisy said with a laugh that was only half joking. I needed a job that would let me pay rent while I figured out what came next. That was 3 years ago, and I'm still figuring it out. What were you doing before? I was married, she said, the words carrying more weight than she intended. That was pretty much my full-time occupation. Mark had a good job, big dreams, specific ideas about what our life should look like. I was supposed to be the supportive wife who made everything run smoothly. And that didn't work out. Daisy stared out the window at the afternoon traffic, gathering her thoughts. It worked fine until I started wanting things too. Until I suggested maybe I could go back to school, or start a business, or have opinions about where we lived, and how we spent our money. Turns out Mark was looking for a partner who would complement his life, not complicate it. His loss, Cameron said simply, and something in his tone made her look at him more closely. You sound like you speak from experience. Medical school and residency aren't exactly conducive to healthy relationships, he admitted. I was engaged once to another doctor. We were perfect on paper, same profession, same goals, same understanding of the demands of medical training. But somewhere along the way, we forgot to be people instead of just professionals. When we finally had time to really look at each other, we realized we didn't particularly like what we saw. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd chosen differently? Every day, Cameron said honestly. But I've learned that wondering doesn't change anything. The only thing that matters is what you do with the life you actually have. They returned to the convention center with 45 minutes to spare before the semifinal round. The afternoon light streaming through the tall windows had transformed the space, casting long shadows between the espresso machine stations and lending the proceedings an almost theatrical quality. The semifinal challenge was announced. Competitors would have 30 minutes to create 3 different latte art designs, each showcasing a different technique. They would be judged on technical execution, artistic merit, and consistency across all 3 pieces. Daisy took her position at Station 15, acutely aware that the field had been winnowed to the most skilled competitors. Around her, baristas, who had been competing professionally for years, prepared their equipment with the casual confidence of masters in their element. Doubt crept in like fog rolling off the bay. What was she doing here? These people lived and breathed latte art. They had sponsors, professional training, years of competition experience. She was just a divorce trying to prove to herself that she was still capable of something beautiful. Hey, Cameron's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. You belong here. I've been watching you work, and you have something most of these competitors don't. What's that? You make art because you love it, not because you're trying to win. There's a difference, and it shows in the work. The starting bell rang before she could respond, but his words stayed with her as she began to work. She started with a classic rosette, letting muscle memory guide her movements while her mind settled into the familiar rhythm of the craft. The milk poured smooth and true, creating petals that unfurled across the coffee's surface like a flower blooming in fast forward. For her second piece, she attempted something more ambitious, a swan, its graceful neck arched across the cup's rim. It was a design that required perfect timing and steady hands, the kind of challenge that separated competent baristas from true artists. As she poured, she felt the zone that athletes and performers talked about, that state where conscious. Thought receded and pure skill took over. The swan emerged perfectly, its form captured in cream and coffee with elegance that surprised even her. For her final piece, Daisy threw caution to the wind. Instead of playing it safe with another standard design, she decided to attempt a pattern she had been practicing in privatery with delicate branches that seemed to sway in an unfelt breeze. It was risky, the kind of design that could either elevate her to the top tier of competitors or result in spectacular failure. She closed her eyes for a moment, centering herself, then began to pour. The milk flowed from her pitcher with perfect consistency, and she could feel the design taking shape even before she looked down at the cup. When she finally opened her eyes, she saw that she had created something magical, a tree that seemed to live and breathe in the coffee's surface, its branches reaching toward invisible sky. Time. Daisy stepped back, her heart pounding with exhilaration and terror. She had given everything she had to those 3 cups, and now all she could do was wait for the judges to determine if her best had been good enough. The semifinal results wouldn't be announced until 8 o'clock, leaving competitors with 3 hours to kill in various states of nervous anticipation. Some huddled together in groups, dissecting their performances and speculating about their chances. Others wondered. The convention center's exhibit hall, examining the latest in coffee equipment and specialty beans. Daisy found herself gravitating toward the exit, needing air and space to process the emotional intensity of the day. She had surprised herself with her performance, but she had also opened herself up to disappointment in a way she hadn't since the divorce. The prospect of failure felt almost unbearable, not because of the competition itself, but because of what it would mean about her ability to take risks again. Running away. Cameron's voice came from behind her as she pushed through the glass doors into the cool evening air. Getting some perspective, she replied, settling onto a bench outside the convention center. The sun was setting behind the downtown skyline, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that reminded her why she had always loved this time of day. Cameron sat beside her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something subtle and woodsy that suggested both sophistication and approachability. "How do you think you did?" "Better than I expected," she admitted. "That tree design. I've never pulled it off that cleanly before. But now I'm terrified that I peaked in the semifinals and won't be able to reproduce it if I make it to the finals." "The fact that you're worried about the finals suggests you think you have a good chance of making it," Cameron observed. "Do you think I do?" "I think you did something remarkable in there," he said seriously. "I've been competing for 5 years, and I've never seen anyone create latte art with the kind of emotional depth you brought to those pieces. That tree didn't just look like a tree, it felt alive." They sat in comfortable silence for several minutes, watching the last light fade from the sky, and the city lights began to twinkle in the gathering darkness. There was something peaceful about the moment, a sense of suspension between what had been and what might come next. "Can I ask you something?" Daisy said eventually. "Of course. Are you married? Dating? I realize I've been talking about my divorce all day without asking about your situation." Cameron smiled. "Single. Have been for about 2 years now. The medical profession isn't exactly conducive to romance, especially when you're also trying to maintain a coffee competition hobby." "This is just a hobby for you?" "Coffee is never just a hobby," he said with mock seriousness. "It's a calling, a passion, a way of life. But yes, it's something I do for love rather than money. The sports medicine pays the bills and feeds my desire to help people. The latte art feeds my soul." "That's beautiful," Daisy said, meaning it. "I envy your certainty about what feeds your soul. What feeds yours?" The question caught her off guard. For so many years, she had defined herself in relation to Mark's dreams and needs that she had stopped thinking about her own soul, much less what nourished it. "I'm not sure anymore," she said honestly. "I used to think it was making a home, creating a life with someone I loved. But maybe that was just what I thought I was supposed to want. And now I think maybe it's this," she said, gesturing toward the convention center, "taking risks, creating something beautiful, even if it only lasts for a moment, connecting with people who understand why perfect milk foam matters." Cameron turned to look at her fully, and in the lamplight, his eyes seemed to hold depths she hadn't noticed before. "I think you're going to be okay, Daisy Mackenzie. More than okay." Before she could ask what he meant, his phone buzzed with a text message. He glanced at it and frowned. Everything all right? She asked. Work thing, he said, but there was tension in his voice that hadn't been there moments before. One of our student athletes, it's complicated. I might need to leave early tomorrow if this escalates. What kind of complicated? Cameron hesitated, clearly debating how much to share. Marcus is one of our track stars. Full scholarship, Olympic potential, but he's gotten mixed up with some people who aren't good for him. There have been threats, some concerning behavior. As the team physician, I'm involved in the support network trying to help him. That sounds serious. It is, and the timing couldn't be worse, with the finals tomorrow. But if Marcus needs help, you'll go, Daisy finished. Because that's the kind of person you are. Is that a problem? It's the opposite of a problem, she said softly. It's one of the best things about you. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility and the growing awareness that whatever was happening between them was more than just competition camaraderie. Before either of them could acknowledge it directly, the convention center doors opened and competitors began filing back inside for the semifinal results. Both Daisy and Cameron advanced to the finals, along with 8 other competitors who represented the cream of the regional latte art community. The final round would take place the following morning, with competitors given 90 minutes to create their masterpiece, a single cup that would represent the absolute pinnacle of their skill and artistry. That evening, in her hotel room, Daisy found herself unable to sleep. She stood at the window, looking out at the city lights and thinking about the strange turns her life had taken. 6 months ago, she had been a married woman whose biggest decision was what to make for dinner. Now, she was competing in a state championship and feeling drawn to a man who seemed to understand something essential about who she was becoming. Her phone buzzed with a text from Cameron. Can't sleep either. She replied, too much caffeine and adrenaline. You? Got called to the hospital? Marcus is in the air. Looks like those threats I mentioned escalated. Daisy's heart clenched with worry for both Marcus and Cameron. Is he okay? He will be. But I won't be making it to the finals tomorrow. I need to stay with him, make sure he's safe and gets the support he needs. Of course you do, she typed back, then deleted it and wrote instead, I'm sorry you're missing the finals, but I'm proud of you for being there for him. Win this thing, Daisy. Show them what real artistry looks like. The finals began at 10. The clock sharp, with 500 spectators filling the convention center's main auditorium. Professional photographers captured every angle as the remaining 10 competitors took their places at stations arranged in a semicircle around the judging area. Daisy felt the absence of Cameron's steady presence more than she had expected. Over the course of just 2 days, he had become her anchor in this unfamiliar world. The person whose encouragement gave her confidence and whose respect mattered more than any judge's score. But as she unpacked her equipment and prepared her beans, she realized that the confidence he had helped her find was now hers to keep. She belonged here not because someone else believed in her, but because she had proven to herself that she was capable of extraordinary things. The final challenge was announced. Competitors would create a single latte art design that told a story. They would have 90 minutes to execute their vision, and they would be judged not just on technical skill, but on the emotional impact and narrative coherence of their piece. Daisy closed her eyes and let her mind drift to the story she wanted to tell. It came to her like a vision, not just a single image, but a sequence of connected moments that captured transformation, growth, the journey from isolation to connection. She would create what she privately thought of as the Phoenix. Working with painstaking precision, Daisy began to build her masterpiece layer by layer. First, she poured the base a swirling pattern that suggested destruction, the chaos of a life coming apart at the seams. Over this, using techniques she had spent years perfecting, she began to add details that transformed the chaos into something else. Rising from the center of the cup, she created the suggestion of wings, not fully formed, but emerging, gaining strength. Around the wings, she used a technique called etching to create details in the foam itself, adding texture and depth that made the image seem to move and breathe. The phoenix took shape slowly, born from ashes represented by the dark coffee showing through strategic gaps in the foam. Its wings spread across the cup's surface, not perfect or fully realized, but unmistakably in flight. As she worked, Daisy became aware of the crowd's growing silence. The usual murmur of conversation had faded, replaced by unfocused attention. That told her something special was happening. When she glanced up briefly, She saw several of her fellow competitors had stopped their own work to watch her creation emerge. With 15 minutes left on the clock, she made the final, most delicate addition, small details that suggested feathers, the curve of a beak, the fierce eye of a creature reborn. When she finally stepped back, she had created something that transcended mere latte art and entered the realm of genuine artistic expression. The judges moved through the stations with their usual systematic precision, but when they reached Daisy's cup, their professional composure cracked slightly. The lead judge, the severe woman who had given Daisy only grudging praise in the preliminary rounds, stared at the phoenix for a full minute before making any notes. "Extraordinary," she murmured, photographing the design from multiple angles. "The technical execution is flawless, but more importantly, this tells a complete story. I can see the struggle, the destruction, and the emergence of something stronger. This is what latte art should aspire to be." When the results were announced an hour later, Daisy Mackenzie, 34-year-old divorced barista from a small cafe in the University District, had won the Metro City Latte Art Championship. The trophy was heavy in her hands, but not as heavy as the realization that she had done something she had never believed possible. She had taken a risk, put herself in a position to fail publicly, and not only survived but thrived. As photographers snapped pictures and reporters asked questions about her background and inspiration, Daisy felt her phone buzzing with text messages. The first was from Gwen. "I knew you could do IT. The whole cafe is celebrating." The second was from Cameron. "Just saw the live stream. That phoenix was breathtaking. You didn't just win a competition, you created art that will inspire people for years to come." She was still basking in the glow of victory when a commotion near the convention center's entrance caught her attention. Campus security officers were talking urgently into their radios, and she caught fragments of conversation about threats and lockdown protocols. Her phone rang. "Cameron." "Daisy, listen to me carefully." His voice was tense, professional. "There's a situation developing. Some of the people who were threatening Marcus have made threats against the university, including events happening on or near campus. The convention center is being evacuated as a precaution." "What kind of threats?" "The kind that law enforcement takes very seriously. I need you to leave now. Don't go back to your hotel if it's in the university area." And the line went dead. Chapter 12. Danger and Decisions. The evacuation proceeded with the controlled urgency of a well-rehearsed emergency plan. 500 people moved toward the exits in orderly lines while security personnel made announcements about meeting points and safety protocols. Daisy found herself swept along with the crowd, her trophy clutched against her chest, her mind racing with questions about Marcus, Cameron, and what kind of situation could escalate from college athletics to security threats serious enough to shut down a public event. Outside the convention center, clusters of people stood in the parking lot, some making phone calls, others simply waiting for word that it was safe to return. The autumn evening had turned cold, and Daisy pulled her jacket tighter as she tried to call Cameron back. No answer. She was debating whether to try to drive home or find somewhere safe to wait when a black SUV pulled up to the curb near where she was standing. The passenger window rolled down, revealing Cameron in the driver's seat. "Get in," he said urgently. "No." Something in his tone made her move without questioning. She climbed into the passenger seat, barely getting her seatbelt fastened before he pulled away from the curb. "What's happening?" she asked as they navigated through the traffic of evacuees leaving the area. "Marcus got involved with some people who run drugs through the athletic department," Cameron said, his hands tight on the steering wheel. "When he tried to get out, they made it clear that wasn't an option. Today's hospitalization wasn't an accident. They roughed him up as a warning. And now they're threatening the university. They're threatening anyone who might interfere with their operation. That includes medical staff, coaches, anyone who might convince their athletes to cooperate with law enforcement." The pieces clicked into place in Daisy's mind. That includes you. That includes me. And by extension, anyone I care about. The casual way he said, "anyone I care about," sent a flutter through her chest that had nothing to do with fear. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere safe while the police handle this. I have a cabin about an hour outside the city. It's isolated, secure, and completely off any grid these people might have access to." The cabin was everything Cameron had promised, a rustic retreat nestled in pine trees, with a wraparound porch and windows that glowed warmly in the darkness. Inside, knotty pine walls and a stone fireplace created an atmosphere of cozy security that helped ease the tension of the evening's events. "I'm sorry your victory celebration got derailed," Cameron said as he built a fire while Daisy explored the cabin's single large room. "You deserve to savor that moment." "I'm just glad you're safe," she replied, meaning it more than she had expected. "And Marcus too. Is he going to be okay?" "Physically, yes. Emotionally, it'll take time. He's a good kid who made some bad choices because he needed money and didn't know where else to turn. The scholarship covers tuition and housing, but his family is struggling, and these people prey on that desperation." Daisy settled onto the couch, her trophy on the coffee table beside her, and watched Cameron work. There was something deeply attractive about his competence, the way he moved through the world with quiet confidence and genuine care for others. "Can I ask you something?" she said as he settled beside her, the fire casting dancing shadows across their faces. "Always. When you said anyone I care about, did you mean me?" Cameron turned to face her fully, his expression serious. "I've known you for exactly 2 days, Daisy. By any reasonable standard, that's not long enough to develop the kind of feelings I seem to have developed for you." "What kind of feelings?" "The kind that make me want to protect you from danger. The kind that make your victories feel like my victories. The kind that make me think about what it would be like to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life." The confession hung in the air between them, honest and vulnerable, and completely unexpected. Daisy felt her heart racing, not with fear this time, but with possibility. 2 days isn't very long, she agreed. "But sometimes I think the heart works on a different timeline than the brain. What is your heart telling you?" Instead of answering with words, Daisy leaned forward and kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, a question rather than a statement. But when Cameron responded, pulling her closer and deepening the kiss, it became something else entirely, a promise, a commitment, a leap of faith taken by two people who had found something unexpected in each other. They talked until dawn, sharing stories and secrets and dreams in the warm glow of the fireplace. Cameron told her about his childhood in his mother's cafe, about the brother whose medical crisis had shaped his career choice, about the loneliness of dedicating himself so completely to helping others that he had forgotten to build a life for himself. Daisy found herself opening up about her marriage in ways she never had with anyone. Even Gwen, she talked about the slow erosion of her sense of self, the way she had gradually become smaller and smaller to accommodate Mark's expanding ambitions. She talked about the silence that had filled her apartment after he left, and how the latte art competition had been the first time in years she had done something purely for herself. "I think I've been afraid to want things," she admitted as the first light of dawn filtered through the cabin's windows. "After the divorce, I convinced myself that wanting things was dangerous, that it was better to just accept whatever life gave me. And now I think maybe the danger isn't in wanting things. Maybe the danger is in not wanting them enough to fight for them." Cameron reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together. "What do you want, Daisy?" The question that had seemed impossible to answer just days before now felt crystal clear. "I want to feel alive again," she said. "I want to take risks and create beautiful things and wake up excited about what the day might bring. I want to be with someone who really sees me not just as an accessory to their life, but as a whole person with dreams and fears and potential." She paused, looking into his eyes. "I want to see where this goes, even though it's terrifying and completely impractical." "Why impractical?" "Because I'm a recently divorced barista with trust issues, and you're a successful doctor who could have anyone. Because we've known each other for 2 days, and we're talking about feelings that usually take months to develop. Because I don't even know if I'm ready for this." Cameron smiled, the expression transforming his whole face. "You know what I learned in medical school? Sometimes the most impractical treatments are the ones that save lives. Sometimes the safe, reasonable approach isn't the one that heals." "Are you comparing our relationship to a medical treatment?" "I'm comparing it to a miracle," he said simply. "And miracles, by definition, don't follow practical timelines." Chapter 15. Morning and New Beginnings. They were awakened by Cameron's phone ringing at 8 in the morning. Detective Morrison, the same Detective Morrison who ordered black coffee every morning at the grind, was calling with news about the overnight arrests. "They got them," Cameron reported after ending the call. 7 arrests, including the ringleaders. "Marcus is safe, the university is reopening, and we can go back to our normal lives." "Normal," Daisy repeated thoughtfully. "I'm not sure I want normal anymore. What do you want instead? She stretched, feeling muscles she hadn't known were tense finally beginning to relax. I want to see what extraordinary looks like. They drove back to the city in comfortable silence, both lost in their own thoughts about what the previous 24 hours had meant and what came next. The convention center was already buzzing with activity as organizers began setting up for the championship's closing ceremony and award presentations. I should go, Daisy said as Cameron pulled into the parking lot. There are probably interviews and photos and all sorts of things I need to do as the winner. And I should check on Marcus, make sure he's processing everything okay. They sat in the car for a moment, neither quite ready to return to their separate worlds. Daisy, Cameron said finally, I meant what I said last night, all of it. So did I. Then let's not let this be just a beautiful story about two ships passing. In the night, let's see if we can build something real.